Like most families, the Lawrences were excited with the birth of their third child, David. But by the time David was 2, the joy turned to fear when they realized their son was totally withdrawn.
I thought he might be retarded compared to our other 2 children. He definitely hadn't made anything like the progress that they'd made, and they'd both been, each one of them had been very different in when they began to speak and do other things. And David, at 2, just wasn't doing anything like what they were doing. I just felt that there was a reason at least to have him checked out.
David, time for school.
Okay.
Across town, David is getting ready for school. But it's no ordinary school.
I'm going to have tarts.
Are you going to make them?
At 3 years old, David was tentatively diagnosed as a schizophrenic. Early diagnosis has given him a chance. It's given him a place in the preschool schizophrenia program.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later.
Okay.
One. And I want you to.
It's like any classroom at John Defoe's school, working through another exercise. Except this class is the preschool schizophrenia program. This is its 2nd year. Teachers like Marianne Ashley help the children find ways of dealing with their problems. Emotional highs and lows, clumsiness, unfocused thinking.
3 cars. See the cars? There's a car in the top, a car in the middle, and a car in the bottom. Which one has something missing?
This one's missing.
Well, what do you think?
It's, yeah.
Could you put a circle around it? Oh, that's good. Very good, David. When I first saw David, he was a child that just screamed, cried, and rolled around. There was very little to what we see today. In working with these children, there is no set formula or any kind of a miracle happening. It's using everyday, ordinary common sense. And we stimulate a lot of language.
2, 3, 4, 5,
Try and deal with the real world. Give them normal roles and deal with the world as it is and not go into any kind of fantasy.
4.
To give you an example, we went to the airport last May, following up after a lesson we had in the classroom. And as you know, in an airport, there's a lot of things happening. Big planes are coming in, little planes, and there were gas trucks putting gas into the airplanes. And we're trying to tell them, look, there's a big airplane coming, there's passengers coming off, there's luggage. And all of a sudden, there's David, his little hand above his eyes, and says, Mrs. Ashley, what's the broken beer bottle doing there? So you can see that he had missed the whole thing that was happening. He was just dealing with something trivial that's got nothing to do with what was happening at hand. So in our teaching and our working with these children, we try and bring in and focus on the wholeness, not on something just fragmented.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's 9 pounds. It's 10 pounds.
10 pounds, David. Does that make any sense?
Well, I just counted up how high it is.
Oh, I think you mean inches. Can we pretend when we're talking about high, we say inches or feet or meters or centimeters, but we don't say pounds?
I'm just saying how high these bed holders are.
Okay. And what's Mrs. McDougall teaching you? Is she teaching you centimeters? You know the word centimeters?
Yes.
Okay, then that's what you say, centimeters.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6.
Okay, that's a guess. You can measure it next time. Maybe we'll bring in a ruler.
1.
That sounds like a pretty good guess. In fact, I think that's probably 1 millimeter.
Yeah.
That's really thin, isn't it?
When you compare David and Linda, is Linda, what David would become if he didn't have a program like the preschool program?
In some ways, yes. David's not the same kind of temperament as Linda is. David's the kind of child who, without treatment, would be totally disorganized. That's what he was like. He'd be all over the place. I think he would be a sociable child because he's well-loved and he comes from a family that can really understand him, and he's a different temperament. But he would be disorganized. He'd be all over the place. So in some ways, he'd be worse off than Linda because the disorganized young schizophrenic presents much more of a treatment problem. Linda can work. She can put in a good day's work in a sheltered workshop. David, without treatment, would not be able to. He'd be all over the place.
He plays very, very well with other children. He demands a lot of attention now, whereas before he didn't demand any at all.
Lloyd and Marion Lawrence are happy. David's improvement is reason for optimism, for hope. It brings the family closer together.
We've always encouraged his sisters to try and react to him reasonably normally, not to make too many allowances for him. One of the things we were told very early on was the problem with a schizophrenic child is that too many allowances are made for the fact that he withdraws. And so he is allowed to withdraw. And he'll sit in the corner and he gets a lot of attention from adults, but he doesn't get attention from other children. And because he's never in a normal environment with other children, he doesn't learn what a normal social environment with his peers is like. So we don't too much discourage his sisters and their friends from just reacting normally with him.
If we hadn't had this program, I don't know what we would have done. We would have been at our wits' end because we were at that time. He was impossible to cope with. We didn't know how to cope with him at all. He would have little tantrums constantly. He would scream for hours on end, and we didn't know how to deal with that. He couldn't express himself vocally in any other way.
How has the program helped?
It gives him a structure to hang his reality on. His perception of the world is often so different from everyone else's, and so his reactions are so different. So he's being taught what is really there, or what is really happening, what he's really perceiving, and how he should react to it. What is appropriate and what is inappropriate. It's difficult to think about the future. What we know from the past about adolescent schizophrenics is that most people are filled with horror by them. Schizophrenics tend to be left out in the cold. And so what we're hoping is that there's some kind of ongoing development of the programs that exist or that have been started. An adolescent program is attempting to get started. It's not a burden on society, it's something which is prevention rather than cure.